Buddy won't be available to take on the Demons this weekend. His appeal last night failed in relation to trying to argue that it was careless and not intentional, didn't have it downgraded successfully. There was some discussion about the merits of Sydney rolling the dice on a $10,000 appeal, which has failed. It comes out of their soft cap. Look, I don't think you can criticise them for trying. Anyway, back to my point. The comments made by both legal counsels have caused discussion. Now, this morning, I can report the Swans are not happy with the statements made by the AFL's legal counsel, Andrew Woods, who described Franklin's actions, as brazen and cowardly. Now, the Swans think that's ridiculous because obviously Buddy is a 1,000-goal plus legend of the AFL, and he's anything but cowardly from a general sense. And the view certainly is that the AFL shouldn't have instructed counsel to make those comments regarding Buddy. Just to clarify, I've spoken to the AFL a short time ago. They didn't instruct their counsel to make those comments regarding Buddy Franklin, explaining that if the counsel had their time over, the legal counsel probably wouldn't have used that type of language. So it wasn't the AFL's instructions regarding that. No doubt there'll be some words between Sydney and the AFL regarding that today. Now, after that, Sydney's counsel, Duncan Miller, did add a slightly controversial statement saying, I'm tempted to say he, that's Cotchin, might be invited to the Logies and not the Brownlow this year, clearly inferring that Cotchin, and trying to demonstrate and make the point that Cotchin was acting. But that's not quite as inflammatory, that language, as the cowardly remark, which has caused some concern from the Swans this morning. And I know that the AFL, I've spoken to them, did not instruct their counsel to make those comments. So I think he was obviously trying to argue his client's case and might have just overstepped the mark in that regard. That's the latest regarding Buddy Franklin. I'm having my cake and eating it too here because I want to keep this one fairly brief. I'll explain why later. Just in terms of the facts, Jason Horne-Francis, who has been the focus of much attention recently for flying to Adelaide for Mother's Day and also delaying his contract talks, he's a number one pick. They get a lot of attention. Did have an exchange of words with Jack Ziebell in the fourth quarter. That's the North Melbourne captain, his teammate, on Sunday. I've seen that behind the goals vision. You can't pick it up on the game vision. I've checked with North Melbourne sources. The crux of it is that Ziebell was telling Horne-Francis off for giving away a 50-metre penalty downfield. I think that Horne-Francis mouthed off to the umpire, and Ziebell was saying, I think in fairly forcible words, and I've spoken to North sources about this, mate, something to the effect of pull your head in. That's not the way we operate here. So Ziebell was showing some leadership. A couple of points on this. I haven't made a big thing of it this week. I knew about it earlier in the week. It was drawn to my attention by several people that saw the exchange on Sunday night. This happens pretty regularly in games. Other teammates give feedback to fellow teammates caught on camera all the time. Parrish made remarks to McGrath on the weekend. I think Mason Redman made remarks to Dylan Shield up in Sydney in their game a couple of weeks ago. I just reckon there's a lot of focus on Horne-Francis and a lot of these draft kids. Rowell, as an example, he took a clipboard once to the game when he was injured, and everyone now focused on him like he's Albert Einstein or Steve Jobs. Jamara. I'm interested in how Horne-Francis plays out, but I just haven't this week made a big deal of this exchange because I just reckon there's a bit of context around that. Teammates give feedback to each other all the time, and I don't want to be sort of seen to sort of blow up another Horne-Francis issue. You know, it'll be interesting to see if he re-signs. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on his body language. But there was an exchange of words with Ziebell in the fourth quarter. Ziebell sort of, I didn't bump him, but he went up to him and stopped him and made a fairly pointed remark. And it was actually, it's a positive story in my view, in the sense that Ziebell's actually shown some leadership here, which North Melbourne have been criticised for, and just pulled up Horne-Francis. But it was discussed briefly on Footy Classified last night. There was an alternative view of what happened, but it's my understanding that Ziebell, and the division supports this, pulled up Horne-Francis for giving away a 50 and just sort of gave him a bit of a mouthful for just some standards. That's what happened. The broadcast rights are heating up behind the scenes. The reason this is interesting is because what will happen off the back of the broadcast rights is that Gil McLachlan will finalise a lot of deals prior to him exiting the AFL. The AFL need the record broadcast rights effectively to pay for a lot of initiatives. They've given the women a 94% pay increase, which is fantastic. The men will obviously now negotiate for a pay increase. There's talk of 10 to 15%. Perhaps they'll settle on a number a little bit lower than that at the end of the day. The clubs want some more money, particularly the bigger clubs in terms of their distribution model. For example, at the moment, clubs including Hawthorn, Collingwood and West Coast don't get paid from the AFL their full salary cap. The AFL issue a dividend to those clubs of about $8.5 million at the moment. The full salary cap's closer to $13 or $14 million. So the clubs want a bit of an evening up on that part, particularly given the money that the Suns and the Giants are currently getting, and St Kilda. And also there's some expensive issues the AFL is looking at in terms of Tasmania and also community umpiring. It's all going to cost a lot of money. But that's the context for the TV deal. They need to do the TV deal first to shore up some of those other deals that Gill wants to finalise before he leaves around September or October, and obviously guessing the date depending on when all this gets done. In terms of some comments yesterday, James Warburton, the CEO of Seven West Media, spoke regarding the anti-siphoning legislation. I spoke to Ruan Ditz about this on the radio this morning, but just to explain this and try and break it down, it's not knocking off petrol, which it sounds like. The anti-siphoning list is basically a list of sports that the government makes sure can be seen on free-to-air television. It dates back to 1992 when there were free-to-air broadcasters. Pay TV came along, and the broadcasters, the free-to-air ones, sought some protection, as did the government, that some of our biggest sporting moments, Kathy Freeman, Kieran Perkins, the recent Tokyo Olympics, you can name thousands of great Australian sporting moments, that they are shown on free-to-air TV. Under the AFL rules, at least 4 of the games per weekend need to be shown on free-to-air TV. But what's happened since that legislation has become a bit outdated, because there's now a thing called SVOD, which is subscription video on demand. That's basically code or an acronym for things like Netflix and Paramount and Apple and all those types of things, the streaming services you access on your phone and your computer and your television at home. And what's happening at the moment is that Seven wants some legislation amended just to reflect the fact and keep up with the times to protect against the streaming services buying all of the football. The legislation and the intent of it was drafted to protect, to make sure that the viewers could see the free-to-air sports, but it was drafted in terms of the language of pay television. But this new form of television's come along, the electronic television, the subscription services, the streaming, and Seven are keen for that legislation just to be amended to protect going forward, to make sure that at least some of the AFL is seen on free-to-air television. The government is supportive of that. It was Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister's policy before the election, and I think that'll be tweaked in coming months. But Seven's obviously keen to get that done at a time when the broadcast rights are being negotiated, and Paramount in particular are having a good hunt and are potentially very keen on buying all or at least some of the rights. And I'll leave you with one. The debate regarding the soft cap, which is essentially the amount footy clubs can spend on their coaching and their football, is hotting up behind the scenes. Coaches are very worried they'll get left behind in that cash rush, which I discussed before. The soft cap was cut during COVID. It meant that coaches that kept their jobs essentially took pay cuts and are doing more work with less coaches. And there's some stats now to back up this coach concern. We've heard from the likes of Chris Scott and Simon Goodwin and Damien Harbeek warning in recent times that the profession is not what it used to be. Well, I've obtained some stats over the last couple of days. The Coaches Association conducted a survey late last year. Alistair Nicholson, the head of the Coaches Association, their CEO, is currently revealing those stats to clubs at the moment. I've learnt of some of those stats, and I went to Alistair Nicholson on this point yesterday. He explained, the CEO of the Coaches Association, that 80% are finding the profession more challenging than in the past. 2/3 have been challenged at the moment by the workload, that's at least 66%, and 50% are concerned with what they'll do transitioning post-football, i.e. what they'll do after getting the sack. There's reputational issues these days. There's all sorts of issues. Of course, the top coaches get a lot of jobs at other clubs. David Teague, case in point. But a lot of assistant coaches, once they get resold, are out of the industry. So it's a huge concern, clearly, and causing a lot of angst amongst the coaches. There's now stats to support that. Tonight on 7 News, I've done a one-on-one sit-down breaking down all the issues regarding, you guessed it, Tasmania. I'll give you an update on that tomorrow. That issue is well and truly heating up behind the scenes. But just repeating that news, the AFL didn't instruct their counsel last night to make those comments regarding Buddy Franklin. It's been a big news day. Don't forget to join us tomorrow, Friday, as we build up to what's going to be a crucial round of football. Triple M rocks football.
That was Tom Browne's news. Come back every Monday, Thursday and Friday for more, and subscribe to Triple M Footy on Listener or wherever you listen to get all our podcasts throughout the season. For Ream Hot Water and McDonald's, Triple M rocks footy.